Well, meat rigs. Everybody says, oh, I don't want to have to retie a meat rig. Well, it's really not very hard.
No.
And we're going to show you kind of a quick way to do it, especially on the boat, especially if you don't have all the components. If you don't have crimps and crimps, you can get yourself in trouble because if you crimp them too tight, you can damage the line, and it's definitely detrimental to the
No doubt.
success. So
If you crimp inappropriately, like if you crimp on the edge of the crimp and not just in the center of the crimp, and you basically pinch that line in the crimp, it's a bad deal.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a recipe for heartbreak, over crimping or crimping on the edges. I think tying it this way is actually better.
yeah,
I would argue that this is a better way to do it.
I think this is a great way to do it.
Yeah.
So what you'll need, 1/0 hooks, VMC 9650s. That's our go-to hook for all of this stuff. You're going to need some mono or fluoro. We use fluoro. This is Invisalign from Suffolk. These are awesome. Triage scissors, I think they call them.
shears.
Trauma shears.
Yeah.
Like cheap, and they work great. And if you drop them in the lake, they're cheap.
Yeah, they cut everything on the boat too. They will cut cable, wire, electrical. I mean, they cut everything.
Milwaukee 25-foot ruler. You have to have this to be
Yes.
able to do
I
that.
think that one's magnetic.
Magnetic too, yeah. So you can stick it. If you drop your scissors and you're in less than 25 feet of water,
You're good.
you can get them back.
Are you guys fishing at the dock again? Maybe.
And then you got to have some beads, your Twinkies. If you're using Twinkies, some sort of a meathead. A toothpick is always handy. A bead chain is definitely something that you should have. And some swivels and possibly a split ring, because I'll show you how all that works in a minute. So, first thing, I would take about 60 inches, at least 60 inches, but 60 inches should be more than enough for what we're doing. That's where this handy dandy tape measure comes in. Take your handy dandy 25-foot ruler and measure out 60 inches. You can actually do this by yourself, but
Yeah.
it's much, much easier with two people.
And I don't actually measure to start. I basically take and stretch my arms out because I'm 6'3", so I'm going to get a little bit of extra line. That's how I start mine, but
Yep.
I don't measure to begin.
I would make sure you have at least 60.
Yeah, so
But if you have, if you got to cut off a foot,
average
You're
dude,
good.
if you stretch your arms all the way out, you're going to be in the ballpark on a meat rig for the most part.
so there's a couple different ways that you can do the business end. You have a hole in here in front of your meathead, and you have one here in the back. So feed that through, and then if you have some bobber stops or bead stops, these are actually for steelhead fishing. It's a tapered piece of rubber. You can feed that through your bead, and you'll see that I think on big weenies come like that.
Yeah, so I've actually gone a step further, Adam. I actually don't use the bead behind it like that. I'll show you. There's a
sticking it
there's a
right
little
there.
trick. Yeah, so if you actually go the opposite direction with the mono or the fluoro, start the bead stop. So you want to get it wet and start it in the back of the head right here. It will go through in theory. You should be able to put it through just a little bit. I'm having a hard time getting it to start. There we go. So it's just started in the back of the head. And then I take my mono and go through. And I actually cut the bead out altogether, so there's not another bead in the back. And I think you can, but I just like the back of the meathead to be as clean as possible in terms of there being the least amount of weight back there. And then you just come through the head the other way, and now you're in the same spot, but you have your bobber stop.
And if you don't have one of these bead pegs, you can use just a regular toothpick, or you can tie a rubber band on the backside, or however you want to do it. So
I think the advantage of the bobber stop is that I mean, I guess all rubber could dry rot and wear out, but toothpicks swell and then lose their, they get smaller when they dry out. So it's just one of those things where, the next time you go to use it might not be ready to go if you toothpick it.
And the same thing with a rubber band.
Exactly. Rubber bands dry out in the sun, so it's an issue. I think the bead stop is the way to go.
So we're going to use a polymer knot on the back of this, just like before. That gives you 2 wraps of mono around. And we're going to wet that just to make sure we don't burn the fluoro when we tighten this up. So there we go. We got our knot. And we got our meat head. Now, if you don't have crimps, this is really easy to do. You take a bead. You feed the bead on. And you go in through the bead, back around the bead, and back out again. And we'll do a close-up view of this. And then you can slide that down. Now, that you can adjust all the way down to about the position of your first one. And when you cinch that up, that bead will hold. And that's going to hold your Twinkie in place. So then you'll slide your Twinkie over the top. Or your fly body if you're using a fly style. So there's our Twinkie. Then we do another bead. Same deal. In through the back, around, and back through again. Same direction that you went through the first time.
If you were uncomfortable with doing it this way, you could also just use another bead stop or bobber stop for steelhead fishing. For each bead. And we don't, just because we end up running out of those things, it seems like. So looping around the bead is not an issue. We have not had breakoffs doing this. I feel actually better about this than crimping, unless you have an actual crimper, which we do. We use an actual crimper to make these rigs. If you're just hand crimping with pliers, I highly recommend you be very careful with that, and consider doing this method.
And then you find one more bead. And you do the same thing for your third Twinkie. And then I think we both do the same thing in that if we're rigging one of these up and we want it to be the same length, just grab a pre-made meat rig that you know is right. And
match your hooks.
Match your Twinkies to where the crimps are.
Almost nailed that one. You pretty much got that one right on the money.
And then your second one.
So then you set your Twinkies to match your previous rig.
Get it all lined up just about right. So we're actually pretty close.
Yeah.
I guess I've done a couple of these. And then you have your bead chain, last part. So we put the bead chain on, same thing, polymer knot. And if you don't know your knots, go to YouTube, to the playlist, Know Your Knots, and they're all in there. And maybe some of those we'll redo at some point, because those are about 3 years old now, and we have a little bit better quality equipment to make videos with
Slightly.
than we did back then.
So I will say on this, the one key to the bobber stop is just getting it wet so that it slides easily, and then pull that tight into the back of the head, and you'll pull it till it breaks off, and that's okay. You want that tail to break a little bit, and you want to leave about maybe 1/4 of an inch behind the head or so, maybe a little less than that, and then just cut it off. And you can actually reuse these bobber stops quite a few times as well.
So if you're going to hook this up on your spin doctor, if you have one of the new spin doctors that has the cross lock snap on each side, but they didn't used to have that. So if you have this style on your spin doctor, I like to use a ball bearing swivel when I'm using a meat rig, because there's just a lot of things going on.
Agree.
But if you have this set up and you're trying to hook this to this, it could be very hard to do. But if you have a split ring, you can just put a split ring and split ring here, or on your bead chain, turn that, and now that is completed. So an easy way to make that termination. There's also this style of cross lock swivel where you can actually undo it, and you can work that into your bead chain as well. So whatever kind, like if you don't have a way to take your cross lock apart, you can always just use a split ring.
Yeah, I actually had not seen the split ring there before. That's a pretty handy idea. I like it. I do like the cross lock better, and my only thought is that sometimes if we have one meat rig that's going and we want to recreate a second one,
Change it.
it's just really fast to grab another. If we have one set up, we just grab it off the spinny and go. So, but you could always change the swivel too in the front. So I guess it doesn't matter.
So the next time you have a little bit of chafing in your line down here, or where one of those crimps were, and you question it, it only takes about a minute to retie a meat rig.
Yeah.
It's way faster than anyone thinks.
It's kind of fun. Play with some different combinations and, build your own custom rigs. If you go through the meat rigs on our boat, probably 50% or more of them have been retied and they're no longer standard issue. A lot of them are custom because we just retie them as we break them and use the pieces and parts.
And some guys are tying them even a little bit longer. So these end up being about 56 inches overall length. And, some guys are tying them all the way up to, 72 inches. Mm-hmm. So something you can mess with if you like. If you want to recreate exactly what it's like, most of the manufacturers are pretty darn close over, each time that they retie it. So,
and I don't think it really matters if it's 58 or 60 or 62 or whatever. As long as whatever's working, you keep doing. So
I hope that helps you. If you need any of the stuff to tie your own meat rigs, look up Captain Chuck's online or stop in the store. And if you stop in the store, those guys will be happy to show you this process as well, in person. Or if I'm there, I'll show you.
Or stop by the boat. If you see us around the summertime, stop by, see us. We'd be happy to pull out a rig.
We're very approachable people.
Especially if you bring bush light.
Yes, if you have bush light. Or hoop tea.
Or that.
At least last year.
Hoop tea. It's terrible.
Yeah. All right, you guys have a great day, and I hope this helps you catch some more fish.